you. Aren't they wonderful? I know. So blessed, so blessed. Would you breathe with me, please? My favorite part. We breathe together. So take in a breath. And again. And one more time. Doesn't that feel good? Have you ever been faced with starting something new, like a new project or a new idea, and you stop yourself from doing it by saying, I don't know how? Anybody? Yeah? If you're like me, you'd rather not do something, even if it is deeply calling to you, for fear of looking foolish or looking silly. Yeah. So we use the excuse, I don't know how, in an effort to save face. Yet the truth is, when we are in the process of growing, and by growing I mean when we're in the process of spiritually growing, not knowing how is often exactly where we need to be. Because not knowing how and doing it anyway leads to knowing how. So there's this story of about a little 6-year-old girl, and she's in Sunday school, and they're doing a coloring project, and the teacher watches her, and this little girl, she's just coloring away, and the teacher says to her, what is it that you're coloring? And she says, I'm drawing a picture of God. And the teacher says, oh, honey, nobody really knows what God looks like. And little girl says, they will when I'm done. Yeah? So Thomas Zaz said this. I love that picture. So you're going to actually see it a few times because it's so cute. He said this: every act of conscious learning requires the willingness to suffer an injury to one's self-esteem. That is why young children, before they are aware of their own self-importance, learn so easily. Yeah? Oh my gosh. So I want you to think back to a time when you started something new, when you took on a project and you felt absolutely silly and you felt really self-conscious, only to find that once you allowed yourself to get out of the way, Emerson talks about getting your bloated nothingness out of the way. So once you allowed yourself to really show up and you embraced the idea about learning, not only did your confidence grow, but your self-esteem grew as well. That's because we are here on this plane of existence very much like being in school. I often call it life school. We are here at life school. And so every experience, every new project, every new idea that we take on is intended to evolve us. It's why we're here. Is this making sense? We are here in life school to grow and learn. Here's how our founder, Ernest Holmes, put it. He says there is an inner urge in our own minds to grow, to expand, to break down the barriers of previous limitations, and to ever widen our experience. This persistent urge is a divine influence, an irresistible force, and constitutes the greatest impulse in human experience. It is still the urge back of all accomplishment, the promise of all fulfillment. This urge to express. So let me tell you how this topic comes about. You guys ever wonder where I get these ideas? Who the hell knows? I just pay attention. So I've got lists everywhere of possible talk ideas, right? And I came across a quote that I had totally forgotten about until I was looking for something to talk about this week. If you know how, it's not big enough. If you know how, it's not big enough. I don't know who said it. I don't have an attribution for it. I don't even know where I heard it. I just know that when I looked at it this week, it hit me right between the eyes, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable. Because, as I said a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about risk-taking, and I showed that picture of me jumping into the lake if you were here, I'm a believer in resting after I've accomplished something. In other words, I believe in allowing my growth muscles that have really been stretched and really been worked when I've accomplished something. I believe in letting them rest. The challenge is the phrase that says an object in motion stays in motion, and an object at rest stays at rest. I don't know about the rest of you, but sometimes I rest a little longer than I should. Anybody else? Yeah. So for me, at least, there needs to be a happy medium between resting after an accomplishment and staying rested, staying still. Because here's the truth of the matter. The universe is constantly evolving. It is constantly growing and expanding. And because we are part of the universe, and that means that our life is intended to evolve and grow and expand. It just is. So yes, rest for a while after a job well done, and then it's time to move again. It's time to grow. Time to take on something we don't know how to do and learn how to do it. Here's another quote from Ernest. Another quote from Ernest Holmes. It seems that man exists for the purpose of self-expression. There appears to be no other reason or excuse for his being. The infinite has already implanted within man an instinctive intuition, which is the spiritual knowledge of good, and his whole growth results from an inner awakening. Everybody take another breath. Now, I have all kinds of personal stories that I can share with you of things that I didn't know how to do, and then I learned how to do them. For instance, I didn't know how to be a minister until I became one in 1998. And trust me, what you learn in ministerial training and what the job really is, really not the same thing. Anybody relate to that? You learn something and then you actually get in the job and it's like, they didn't teach me that. Yeah, okay. I didn't know how to co-chair a conference until I did my first one in 2003, which then led to co-chairing conferences 2004, 2005, 2007, 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 16, and now 2019. So I didn't know how until I learned how. Yeah? Okay. I didn't know how to publish a book until I did in 2010. Boy, was that a learning experience. I didn't know how to move to a foreign country until I did in 2013. I didn't know how to make a spiritual center out of an industrial building until we did it in 2017. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I've been kind of resting on that one for a while. I mean, it was a big job. It was a big job, right? But I also know that the fact that I recognize that I've been resting a little while means that I know that it's time for me to grow. So I have another example that I wanted to share with you about someone that I knew who walked through I don't know how and took on one of the most positive life learning experiences that she had ever had. So several years ago, after I published my book, my sister and I designed a workshop to go along with it. Several of you have been through workshop based on my book, Giving God a Good Time? Not a person is raising your hand. Where were you 6 years ago? I did it here. Okay, anyway, not here, but anyway. No, I did it here. I did it in Calgary. Apparently so. But wait till I tell you what I'm going to tell you. Maybe you'll change your mind. So one of the processes within the workshop, my sister is masterful at creating processes for workshops. And one of them was based on the chapter in my book called Skinny Branches. Now, let me explain what skinny branch is. Going out in a skinny branch means that you're allowing yourself to move away from the safety of the trunk and move out onto those skinnier branches that may not be as strong or supportive, but that's where the sweet fruit is, right? So that's what skinny branches is. So this particular process had people literally exploring both mentally and physically what it felt like to leave the comfort of the trunk and move out onto those skinny yet very rewarding branches. It's a very cool process. So she had somebody, I'll explain it to you because it was cool. So somebody was sitting here, and this was like the safe branch. And then there were chairs like this. And as she walked people through their fears, then she would say to them, "Are you ready to move to the next chair?" So here they are in the safe chair, almost holding on to the trunk like this. Are you ready to move and make a commitment to do something else? Okay, talk. Are you ready to move now out into the skinny branches? Very powerful. So anyway, during one of these, a few years ago, the participant shared that she was getting an inner urge to begin studying for the ministry. And the idea absolutely terrified her because she didn't know how. And yet the more that we talked about it, and the more talked about the possibility, the more excited she became. You could see that she was really starting to kind of envision herself doing this. And it totally reminded me of that idea, if you know how, it's not big enough, right? Because she didn't know how to become a minister yet because she hadn't done it. She hadn't learned it. She hadn't stepped onto that path yet. And yet what I know about learning is that once you step onto the path, the learning begins. Once you step on the path, the learning begins. You begin to understand. It's kind of like that 12-step saying that says, more will be revealed. Now, that's not to say that there's something or someone out there withholding information from us. There's no guy up in the sky that says, "Oh, no, you can't know this." That's not what I'm talking about. It's just that as we move forward, more is revealed. Is this making sense? As we rise up, we can see more. As we grow, we expand our field of vision and knowledge and possibility. And what's so interesting is that when we keep moving forward, the universe then shows up to support us. And then it reveals more of what we need to know on our learning path. For instance, while this woman was fighting this urge that she wanted to go to ministerial training, she was fighting it because she didn't know how. She didn't know how to be a minister. She didn't even know how to step onto the first step. The ways and the means weren't available to her. For one thing, it was too expensive. It was too far away from her, and it was too time-consuming. So she was arguing for the limitations. Even though she was being so pulled, she was arguing for how she didn't know how to do it. However, as she began to open up to the idea of it, in other words, when she started moving toward the possibility, saying, "I don't know how, but maybe I'm willing to learn," she found out that a new ministerial class was starting that fall closer to where she lived, which meant that it would be more affordable and it would be less time-consuming. But it wasn't until she said, "Yes, I'm going to look into this," that the ways and the means made themselves available to her. It's a perfect illustration of how the universe yearns to grow in us, grow as us, and it supports us when we participate with it. Is this making sense? Yeah. Mary Morrissey, who teaches the Prosperity Plus classes, bases a lot of her teaching on a particular quote by Henry David Thoreau of Walden. And it says, if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will pass an invisible boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him. The key to that, as one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams, pays attention to that urge, pays attention to that nudge, that, as Ernest Holmes put, the tapping at the heart. As one advances confidently in the direction of their dreams, he will meet a success not found in common hours. Unexpected in common hours. So as we courageously move toward an idea, even especially when we don't know how, we will be supported in learning how. It's the way the universe works, because, again, if you don't know how, or if you know how, it's not big enough. So, as I said earlier, learning new things can be intimidating, especially if we're feeling as if we're going to look foolish or silly. Anybody who has taken their first foundations class knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, what am I getting myself into here? So when I'm teaching, I often will explain what happens when we are faced with a new learning opportunity. And I'm going to share this with you, because once we understand how the process of learning works, it really helps to diminish the fear and the insecurities around it, because that we see that it's a natural part of learning. So the first step in learning with this continuum right now is unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. This is where you don't know, and you don't know that you don't know. You're ignorant of something, right? You just don't know. You don't know that you're ignorant. So it's not part of your sphere of influence, right? So the analogy I use when I'm talking about is learning how to drive. You know, when you're a little kid, like the little girl that was drawing the picture of God, right? When you're a little kid, you don't think about driving. Never even enters your idea. Your parents are going to take you where you need to go. You are blissfully ignorant of anything that has to do with driving, and you don't care, right? You're unconsciously incompetent. The next one is conscious incompetence. This is where you become aware of something, and you're also aware that you don't know how to do it. You may want to do it, but you don't know how. So going back to the driving analogy, now you're about 12, 13 years old, right? And you realize that pretty soon you're going to be able to drive. Your whole world is about to open up, but you still don't have a clue how to do it. So you are painfully aware or conscious of your incompetence. You with me? Then, the next step is conscious competence. This is where you begin the actual process of learning. And while you're learning, you are paying attention to absolutely everything, because it isn't natural yet. You still have to focus on everything. Going back to driving, remember when you were a new driver and it was hands on 10 and 2 and straining your neck so that you can make sure that there's nobody around you, and you keep your eye on the speedometer. You're doing everything absolutely consciously, on purpose. You are consciously competent, but it isn't second nature yet. You are having still to think about it. And then the final step is unconscious competence. This is where you just know how to do the thing that you know how to do, right? I often think of people who knit. Any knitters in the room or crocheters or anything like that? Really, not very many. Who are you people? You're Canadians. Thank you. So people who knit, have you ever sat and talked to somebody who's knitting? And they can just talk and they can just do anything, and they're just like this, right? They're not thinking about it. They're not going knit, purl, blah, 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 nothing like that. They don't have to stop and even think about what it is they're doing. It has become part of who they are. The same thing is true about driving. Most of us here are experienced drivers now. We can get in the car and just drive. For instance, now don't be smart aleck. Neil, don't be smart aleck. How many of you actually remember getting here this morning? All right. Not me. I left my house and I was here. I never thought about it again. We just know how to do it. We have become unconsciously competent. The challenge is, if we choose to only do the things that we are unconsciously competent at, we've stopped growing. We've stopped learning. We have, in essence, stopped living. Certainly stopped expressing. So I want to close with a beautiful quote from Ernest Holmes. Ernest was very much in this talk this week. He was speaking to me. He said this: true creation is the unfoldment of an idea, the very urge of the life principle as an idea to create something new out of apparently nothing. This may be illustrated by a musician working out a musical composition, an artist painting a picture, or an inventor conceiving of a new object for the use of mankind. As the idea unfolds in mind, everything necessary for its perfect fulfillment is created with it, or is a part of the unfoldment. I could do a whole talk on that quote right there. Going back to conscious, unconscious competence. Got to talk about this guy for a second. I know. I don't know if y'all noticed that he was playing a really big saxophone here, bass sax, right? Usually we see him on the soprano sax, right? Or sometimes on the tenor sax, right? So I asked Amy, did she have to rewrite the music for him to change keys? Because this is a completely different key than what his music usually is. And she says, no, I think that he just does it in his mind. Is that true? Did you just transpose in your mind? Yeah. Unconscious competence. Now, you were conscious of it? Okay, yeah, I bet. Yeah. Nothing like putting you on the spot. But that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, is just trying something new to us here, trying something new to keep the muscles stretched. So what this tells me is that I'm thinking that it's time for me to take on something new, and I've got an idea in mind. I know. And I've kind of put it out into the universe, so I'm pretty sure that the opportunity is going to come knocking on my door, and I won't know how to do it until I know how to do it. Are you guys ready to join me in trying something new? Yeah. No. I misspoke. I'm going to do something new. Are you willing to step out and try something new for yourself? Yes? Okay. That's all I got. And so it is. Sorry to put you on the spot there, cutie patootie. It looked effortless, let's put it that way. Please welcome again our amazing, amazing band.